read the land acknowledgement, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We would like to acknowledge that the city and borough of Juneau is on Tlingit land and wish to honor the indigenous people of this land. For more than 10,000 years, Alaska Native people have been and continue to be integral to the well-being of our community. We are grateful to be in this place, a part of this community, and to honor the culture, traditions, and resilience of the Tlingit people. Gunishish.
Gunishish.
Thank you, Mr. Brooks. Ms. Hirsch, would you note or call the roll?
I will note that all assembly members are present, with Mayor Weldon being on Zoom.
Thank you, Ms. Hirsch. I'll try to be more direct in my asks for you in the future. Were there any, we may have a motion to approve the agenda. Mr. Kelly.
I move and ask unanimous consent that we approve the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. May I have a motion to approve the lengthy list of minutes that we have? Ms. Hall?
I move we approve the minutes from November 4th, 2024, December 2nd, 2024. And these are all for the committee, the whole assembly minutes. January 27th, 2025, February 24th, 2025, March 5th, 2025, September 8th, 2025, November 3rd, 2025, and ask for unanimous consent.
Very good. Seeing no objection, that motion is approved. Thank you, Ms. Hall. That moves us to our agenda topics. First up is an ordinance regarding definition of newspaper of general circulation. And Mr. Steininger.
I'd like to declare a potential conflict of interest. I write in my day job for the Alaska Political Report. While the political report doesn't fit under the criteria discussed here in this ordinance, they do have a sister publication that would. I reached out to the attorney. She effectively instructed me, if I feel like I can continue to be objective, that it's not enough of a conflict that I'd have to recuse myself. I believe I could be effective, but I'll leave it to the will of the body if you feel otherwise.
Thank you. Ms. Wright, any comment? I feel fine with it, but yeah.
Thank you for the question. So, Mr. Deputy Mayor, this decision would be up to you. If you're saying that you're okay, any other member of the assembly could then challenge that decision. But the discussion tonight, there's no request for proposals. It's simply a definition. It's pretty attenuated. If it was the RFP, I would have said, yes, there's a conflict, but where we are tonight, I don't believe so.
The current state of it, okay, of the discussion. And if we start getting into something where maybe it would be an issue, you would let us know.
I would flag it, or Mr. Steininger.
Very good. Thank you. I see no issue with you participating in. Ms. Wall.
Mr. Chair, only because I didn't hear Mr. Steininger. Did you say you feel like you can be objective, or you feel like you might be affected?
Those are very different statements. I feel like I can be objective. Yes. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Feel free to participate in this item, Mr. Steininger, until the attorney says differently. Madam Manager.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Smith. So the purpose of this ordinance is to modernize our public notice requirements, really to more effectively communicate with our constituents, with our residents. But I want to talk a little bit about the public notice that we currently do. We have all kinds of reasons for public notice, some of them legal, some of them because we want to make sure the community gets that information. So of course, we publish public notice for all of our meetings, advisory meetings, regular assembly meetings. We're required to issue public notice for anything public hearings and notice of adoption of legislation. There's also a number of notices that we publish for example, quarterly reports from Treasury for defaults, elections information, foreclosures. So there's actually quite a bit of communication that we officially and formally notice to our public. And right now we do that by printing in a newspaper of general circulation. So we do that by printing in the way we meet that legal requirement is by printing in the Juneau Empire. We, of course, also communicate on different channels like our website and our Facebook page and all of those. But the way we meet the legal requirement is through the Juneau Empire. Really, communication has changed since that statute was adopted and since the city charter was adopted. And many of our Alaskan neighbors have chosen to modernize their municipal code by making different changes to public notice requirements to be able to kind of be more flexible in how they meet those notice requirements, but most importantly, in how they communicate with their constituents. So the ordinance before you today does that by defining newspaper of general circulation as a publicly accessible source of information that is distributed to the public in print or online without a required cost. And I will just note that we do have in your whereas clauses in this ordinance a reference both to the city charter that requires the public notice, and then also Alaska statute that defines publishing as appearing at least once in a newspaper of general circulation. So our attempt here is to just provide more definition on the term newspaper of general circulation. Logistically, we've had some challenges with the Juneau Empire going to a twice weekly printed schedule that is managed out of state. And this has caused some challenges with our being able to effectively meet public notice requirements for our public, but it has also caused cancellations of certain meetings because again, we weren't able to make that notice requirement. So there's two notice reasons to public notice. Obviously, we want our community to know about the meetings. We want them to know about the conversations. We want their input on the conversations. There's also a legal requirement for certain planning commission decisions, for example, and files of that and documentation of that public notice can be, critical information when appeals are heard or those decisions are challenged. So that's just important as you think about how we implement our public notice requirements. Right now, we, like I mentioned, use the Juneau Empire, and we spend about $60,000 a year in that public notice. So certainly there is a budget impact to that, and that does not include the school district that also has public notice requirements. We have in the past published in the Alaska Journal of Commerce because we're like, we need a newspaper of general circulation that's in print. And is that really is that really where Juneau residents are getting their information? But, sometimes when we need to meet those requirements, we do that. There are a number of examples in your memo about what different municipalities have done to meet this requirement. But I want to just talk a little bit about if you pass this ordinance, how the manager's office would implement it. It's important to note that we need certain things in our notice. We need the notice to be very broad, so the public needs to be very accessible to it. They can't have paywalls. It can't be something where there's that you're required to subscribe, right? It needs to be accessible to anyone. It needs to be secure and searchable. So there's like a public record component that's really important, so we can document that, yes, we did indeed provide that public notice. And it needs to be verifiable. And those are important because right now, our website would not meet those requirements. So our proposal is not to rely on the City and Borough of Juneau website for meeting those requirements. That's not to say that in the future we could develop a system where we meet all those needs, where we can prove that the web page wasn't altered after the fact and all of those things. But it is a little more complicated than just like, hey, did you send out a social media post on that, or did you throw that up on your website? So what we would do to implement this change is we would issue an RFP, and that RFP would be specific to, wanting to make sure there was broad public access, that it was secure, that it preserved the public record, that it was able to notice timely. That's often something we struggle with those twice weekly newspaper publication deadlines. A lot of our deadlines are driven by, well, you got to get it to the paper 3 or 4 days before, and then we miss that. And so timeliness is important, and then cost is also important, of course. So I just want to kind of point out that I think there's really two parts to this proposal. There's the ordinance that defines newspaper of general circulation, which allows us to broaden how we communicate in a legally required manner with our public. But then really where we implement that is through the budget and through that RFP process. So that would of course come after if this is adopted. Happy to answer any questions.
Questions from the assembly? Mr. Kelly.
Thank you. When I was reading this, and also sounds from your explanation, because the Juneau Empire has a paywall and has a subscription model, would they no longer qualify as public notice if we were to pass this ordinance?
So the reason the Juneau Empire qualifies is because they have that print version. Any respondent would need to be able to respond to that. Like we would issue an RFP, would say, how are you going to make sure that there's no paywall and doesn't require a subscription? So while, you know, you can, I think, read 2 articles for free or something, I imagine that the Juneau Empire and our other media outlets have ways that they can navigate that and would need to navigate that for the purposes of public notice.
Mr. Brooks, and then Ms. Uscandies.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If we were to put out a RFP for a new avenue to get this kind of information out, what would be the max budget level for a service like that you would be looking to pursue?
I would, you know, not want to spend more than what we currently spend, which is $60,000 a year. I do anticipate that we would receive proposals that are competitive.
Very good. I had Ms. Uscandies and then the mayor after her.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you for that. I think my question is around the idea of paywall is easy to understand. The secure and searchable, that preserving the public record, that piece of that. And I don't know if that's why our website, you know, what the pieces of the things you listed, why our website wouldn't qualify. Do we feel like any of the existing media resources in town are capable of this, or would we expect that they would change something about that if they wanted to respond in order to meet that? Only because it's kind of a limited game here in town. So I'm curious on your take on that.
Thank you for that question. I have a sick deputy manager who can't help himself and is texting me voraciously right now. Robert. I do not know the answer to that question of like what the technology requirements would be for our local news media outlets. I do know that there is a company multiple companies that do provide this type of service for municipalities. I can't recall. I want to give you the name of it and I'll get it here in a second. But so the technology definitely exists. And I don't know, again, what that looks like for our local companies. But we would definitely, any RFP would favor a local media outlet because those are the most likely outlets to reach our constituents, who are the people that we want to get this notice. Column and Civic Plus are the 2 companies that specialize in this public notice.
Follow up?
Go ahead.
So just to make sure I understand that, rather than it just being only for the media, even though that would be something that we would think that's what's coming to people's heads, so that's got preference. There would be tech companies where then Juneau would just have to learn, if you want to know what's published, go to Civic Plus. Like it's not bespoke, but it's just for that. That's just what that company does.
Well, Civic
yeah.
Plus is our parent company that provides our code management. So they do a lot of municipal services. But yes, there are services that just do that public notice.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Madam Manager and Madam Attorney. I talked to you about this earlier and asked with the last whereas clause and a little bit this discussion right now. I'm just making sure that the only place that we have to publish is our website. Our website is hard to maneuver, and I just want to make sure that that's not going to be the only place that we put information out there. Do either of you would speak to that?
Yeah, thank you for that question. You are correct, although we are in a website refresh that will hopefully make it easier to navigate. The intention would be to issue an RFP and find a media outlet to notice this. At this time, our website is not capable of meeting the documentation requirements that we would need.
Ms. Wall. Very good. I had Mrs. Scandies, but I'll jump in. I guess a question, the list for, the list of communities and what they've chosen to do to, I guess, either meet this requirement or publicly notice. Do we feel that those are like compliant with state law in those efforts? I'm not like trying to throw shade on those other places. I just am like,
Illegal.
Okay.
Oh, Mr. Deputy Mayor, these are all past legal muster. They haven't been challenged, and they are compliant with publication and notice to the public.
Okay. Thanks. I guess then my follow-up, seeing things posting on the website, public facilities, Facebook, I guess just in knowing that we are in a more challenged budget environment, have we explored, using the communications team or something to not have to do an RFP and not spend $60,000, but put these notices where people will learn to look at them. People will change behavior if they know where to go, and will start to go to these things. And how many people are looking at the Empire for this anyway? I guess have we explored not needing to do an RFP, or is that website compliance piece the crux for why we need to do an RFP?
Yeah, I think the desire for an RFP is twofold. It is the website compliance piece. We could overcome that. And I do want to note, a lot of these mechanisms that that other municipalities are using to notice are also mechanisms that we are currently using, right? They're just not what we depend on for our official public notice. So the reason for having that RFP is twofold. It's to make sure, we have that documented notice. We could certainly overcome that internally. And the second is really wanting to make sure we effectively and efficiently have the maximum transparency possible. And doing that through a means that is maybe more intuitive to our public than going to the city website or going to a bulletin board or something like that.
Thank you. Further questions? Excuse me, Ms. Sandys.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Just, I understand that with where we are tonight, then it's questions and introducing this as you said, how it would be implemented. With next step would be the RFP. And you just said that some of these things we already do, but kind of in the same line as Deputy Mayor Smith's thinking, and also just in the, gosh, the public, is, as society changes, is hard to reach in these ways. So let's try to find them in those ways. In implementing, I would want to see us, if we're not already, doing the paper posting and just where people might say, hey, when I go to Fred's, I can see what's coming up at the city. So that would just be a request that if we're not already doing some of these, that maybe we do some of these, unless you thought it would add an undue cost or something. So that's just my preference. Thanks.
Very good. Any further questions from the assembly? Anyone would start with a motion to get us going? Mr. Kelly.
I move that the Committee of the Whole forward ordinance 2026-10 to be introduced to the full assembly and ask for unanimous consent.
I'll just object for just a quick statement. I definitely understand the need to make this change. I will continue the conversation on the RFP and like the need for the spending. And it's I know our staff looks into these things and thinks deeply, but I will maybe have a continued conversation on that. But I'll remove my objection, and there's a couple others. Ms. Hughes-Scandies and then Mr. Brooks.
You can go to Mr. Brooks.
Mr. Brooks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just playing off what the chair said there. You said that the Empire expenditures were 60,000, but we still do the other avenues. Do you have an idea what the overall expenditure is for all the avenues that we do?
Well, it would be harder to quantify that because it's absorbed within our communications budget. So I can certainly talk to Communications and Engagement Division and try to get you an estimate of that.
Can you remove your objection, Mr. Brooks?
I remove my objection. Thank you.
Ms. Hughes-Scandies? Very good. Any further objection to the motion? Seeing none, that motion is adopted. That moves us to our next item. Whichever one it's here for. An ordinance establishes City and Borough of Eagle Crest Recreation Area Department and Recreation and Ski Area Advisory Board. We have a memo, we have a draft ordinance. I imagine there'll be many questions, and anyway, we'll see where we go here. Madam Mayor, I didn't offer you I didn't talk to you in advance. I wanted to give you a moment if you would like it to speak to, anyway, you made the motion at a previous regular assembly meeting, no pressure, but if you'd like to, let us know where you were coming from, but I will give you you have the floor if you would like it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate that. And I'm sure there will be lots of questions. Just for people's background, my children grew up at Eagle Crest. They soon became much better skiers than I was, so I just spent a lot of time in the lodge, and the kids learned how to ski race, and my youngest son skied into college. So Eagle Crest is definitely a place to learn how to ski, and I've definitely spent a lot of time since I spent much.
Madam Mayor, you are kind of cutting out a little bit. I don't know if there's anything like in the way of your microphone, but.
Oh, it's open. Let me try. Is that any better?
Okay. Try again. It wasn't any better, but.
How about that? Is that any better?
Definitely not any better. Were you gonna call back? Is that what you said?
No, I did not say that. Is that any
okay.
better now?
Actually,
Yeah.
kind of. I mean, yeah,
I'll
maybe a little
try.
slower. Very good. Okay,
I will try and speak slower about that.
there we go.
Just trying to keep up with Madam City Manager. Anyway, so first of all, I appreciate everybody's emails. Just shows that Eagle Crest is loved in this community. However, I believe that Eagle Crest cannot continue how it is right now. It has struggled with operational instability and management challenges for many years. We have had good managers and good boards, and some bad managers and some bad boards, but regardless, we remain in status quo. So I think we need to change things up. And where I see is it's a structural problem, and that is why I brought forth the ordinance. Eagle Crest has more year-round staff, but despite this, they still have struggled with basic ski operations this season, amplified by long-term neglect and deferred maintenance of equipment. I believe the city needs more oversight on these operations. I am saying that this is probably one of our strongest boards that we've had at Eagle Crest, and I hope they will continue to advise us. Don't see the structure. I don't see this continued structure of an empowered board changing the status quo. And Eagle Crest is in the hole a few million, and it needs large amounts of financial assistance. So in simple terms, if we are investing large amounts of money on things such as the chairlifts or maybe even the gondola, we want to have more of a say in how that money is spent, and currently we don't. So I think we need to change the governance of Eagle Crest, and I'll leave it at that, and hopefully you heard me.
Yes, you came in much clearer, Madam Mayor, and thank you for, sharing your thoughts and kind of desires of doing something. Madam Manager, did you want to, we have your memo, we've read your memo, we've seen the draft ordinance. I guess, was there anything you wanted to add before I go to questions from the Assembly?
No, Deputy Mayor, thank you.
Very good. I imagine a good number of questions, and we'll get started. Miss Adkison and then Miss Wall.
I have a softball nitpicky question to start out. I noticed when we changed to an advisory board, we have designated seats. So we have one member with expertise in outdoor recreation and one member with expertise in ski area operation. In my time on the Assembly, I've seen designated seats be pretty difficult to fill. So I was wondering why we decided to have specific requirements for 2 of the seats on the board.
Ms. Atkinson, so this came with a recommendation from staff. It was reviewed by the mayor as well. The idea would be the larger development is both a recreation and ski area board because it's moving to a year-round facility. Thus, the inclusion of someone, when you're shifting to a larger year-round, wanted to make sure that there was someone who would have ski area expertise and someone who might have like outdoor education or summer expertise. That can absolutely be changed. You are correct that it has been difficult to fill those positions when they're designated.
Miss Wall.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This question's for Manager Kester. If this change was made, it would obviously be shifting, the work that the board does onto others, whether that be, and some of it on the Assembly, some of it on staff. If we were to make this change, would you be coming to us with recommendations on more capacity that you need to handle that extra burden, or things that we would not do somewhere else? Or how would you tackle that in terms of the staff's workload were we to make this change?
Thank you for that question. I've thought a lot about that. And I've thought a lot about capacity, not of Eagle Crest staff, but of the manager's office staff and city administration staff. So I'm going to respond in that context because I, of course, don't know the details of what it would take to manage Eagle Crest because I haven't been doing that. I do think it's difficult because we have so many fires and so many things to deal with that, Eagle Crest may not always rise to the top when I'm trying to keep the valley from flooding or, a snowpocalypse or all these other things that the manager's office is turning to deal with. That being said, I've spent a lot of time on Eagle Crest since I became city manager, and it's time spent trying to influence, trying to guide, trying to, talk through with either assembly members or board members even. So I don't necessarily think that it would take more capacity out of the manager's office. And I look at the Parks and Rec department, which is a very large, actually much larger department, much more, much larger budget and a lot broader touch to the community. And, I would say that's a department that has its moments where the level of manager's office involvement is very high and has its moments where the assembly involvement is very high. But generally speaking, it's just kind of like doing their thing, providing quality services to our residents. So I think there would be effort involved in, figuring out what the future of Eagle Crest looks like. I think that effort would happen under regardless, that effort will include the manager's office, will include the assembly, and will include the board, right? But I think it's hard for me to answer that question without reflecting on the amount of time that I have spent on this issue and some of our successful models of departments. So I didn't quite answer yes or no, but I hope I provided you the context that you were looking for.
Mr. Kelly.
Thank you. I noticed that the job posting has gone out to hire the replacement city manager. If we were to, oh, sorry, sorry. Gosh, okay. I promise that was not a Freudian slip. That we put out to hire the next Eagle Crest manager. If we were to forward this ordinance, the assembly would have it introduced in March or in February, would act on it presumably in March, and then there'd be 30 days before it's active. So I guess I'm kind of wondering who will be hiring the next Eagle Crest manager?
So I think that decision does depend, of course, on your conversation tonight and any direction you take. Certainly, if you move, to introduce an ordinance and adopt that ordinance, the manager's office would be making that hire with the involvement of the advisory board.
Mr. Brooks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The operations at Eagle Crest have a pretty good recovery rate compared to a lot of other CBJ facilities. If the manager's office were to take over the operations, how do you see improving that recovery rate? Or would that be, the intended goal?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I think that that would just depend on direction from the assembly. So the argument that I make in my memo is that we provide plenty of services to our residents that require taxpayer support, right? The pools, the field house, the ice rink, all of those. And if the assembly gave direction to increase the cost recovery at Eagle Crest, we would have a conversation about what that looked like. It probably looks like, aggressive summer operations. That would just, spoiler alert. If you gave that direction, then we would work on a plan with the Eagle Crest board and staff to implement that. Another option, of course, is acknowledging that providing a recreational ski area at the true operating cost, which I did state in my memo that I think the manager's office would be more quick to recognize the true cost of providing that service. Another option is to provide that service and recognize the true operating cost of it.
Ms. Wall.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. This is like another version of the same question. I understood your answer, and this is maybe more what I'm curious about. Do you have like a sense of the type of decisions or work that the manager's office and the assembly would be doing in a future where there was no Eagle Crest board? Like, what kind of decisions, it's okay if you don't know that, but what kind of decisions would you be looking at? What kind of decisions would we be looking at that we're not right now?
So I just want to be clear that I think any decisions that the assembly looks at when it comes to this really big picture future of Eagle Crest will involve the board, whether it's empowered or advisory, because those are the key stakeholders and they represent the ski community. So I think some of the things, and these aren't new things, these are things the board has been wrestling with, the board has been bringing to you, but a summer operations plan, a business plan for the gondola, which we are, manager's office is working through that with Eagle Crest. A capital replacement plan, right? That's like realistic and acknowledges some of those costs. Those are the types of decisions I think you'd have to work through, and key among them would be balancing that tension between a small ski area that's our local gem and opening that up to the broader public, especially when we look at summer operations. So I see from a policy perspective, a lot of like really digging into that that piece and the consequences of that piece. Not something you haven't talked about extensively. You have talked about that extensively. It's just a matter of like making those decisions and implementing those decisions.
Good, I'll hop in really quick. Why do we have empowered boards? Or is there a history behind it or the background? I mean, I frame it just because I've talked with others now in different places around in the United States, some very complicated, large tax, places that run golf courses and marinas and whatever, and they don't have an empowered board for each of those things. Some of those things are enterprises funds where, they have to be, their books have to balance. But I guess, do either of you know why we have them?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. So a small peek back into our charter commission. The first empowered board was the hospital board, and that was the only one established by charter. Very, very limited conversation occurred about empowered boards, but what we do know is that the intent was to create citizen-led boards to give community input, community insight, to look at various, so this is what they says. The intent was to allow the assembly to create citizen boards of various sorts, which could conduct hearings, make recommendations, and make decisions. Then over time, we had a voter initiative for docks and harbors, voter initiative for the ski area, and voter initiative for the airport. So those were deemed important boards that could be run by citizen-led boards. It's not completely an answer because there's not a ton of, unless you were there in 1977 or 1981. I mean, there are people that were probably there, sorry. Could tell us. But there's not a lot of great notes from those meetings as to why they were there. And but it's clear the intent was that we really cared about giving a voice to citizens and to give that opportunity for citizens to participate. But ultimately, the authority was always left with the assembly. So.
Thanks. And I guess just a quick follow-up. I was trying to remember if the aquatics board, I don't remember if it was empowered when it first came to existence or it was more advisory, but then now, and then just remind me, it has since, been.
It was not,
resolved.
it was not. So in 2010, there was a debate as to whether to do a charter amendment and to move it to an empowered board. The decision was made not to. Then I think, I don't know, 5 or 6 years, there was the PRAC conversation. So aquatics board has been kind of in and out for years, but in 2010, there was a big discussion about that. So.
Very good, thank you. Let's see, Ms. Hall, Ms. Uscandies, and then back to Mr. Kelly.
Thank you, Chairman Smith. Wondering about designated seats on empowered boards. That's something that could also be done, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Ms. Uscandies.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'll just say I'm looking out in the audience. You guys should have taken better notes. My question is a little bit back into the weeds, not so broadly. It makes total sense to me that the city manager's office would have less tolerance for risk. I think with the fireworks, we just saw, when we're thinking of the city treasury and what we deem as an allowable amount of risk is always going to be probably a higher standard at this level.
And Eagle Crest has some unique, there, I can think of capital equipment, but I can also think that I am probably not thinking of all of them, but I've seen some of them mentioned in emails because you think of some of the decisions that might be made day to day, whether it's controlling the, avalanche risk or ski patrol risk or any of those things. Could you speak to that a little bit? Because I do know that the city manager's office has experience dealing with some of that just through our EOC, or we just talked about avalanches, but how we would approach that. And I'll couch that by saying, I know you're not managing Eagle Crest now, so I'm not expecting an in the weeds answer, but how would we try to approach that, the risk and liability issue? Thank you. It is a difficult question because I don't know what I don't know. As far as the risk that Eagle Crest that currently is experiencing. That being said, it's a riskier industry, right, than like typing on my keyboard, which has some carpal tunnel risk, sedentary risk probably. But I will say that under the general manager's leadership, he definitely has brought some, from his ski industry experience, brought some things to our attention and has been working through, the risk of snowmaking, the risk of opening up certain routes, and has definitely shared a lot of things just in, working with him and supporting Eagle Crest that we need to be thinking of, and we need, so I guess my insight is more from working with the current manager, or like Lupro, you're the current manager, but working with Mr. Simmons and his management and bringing these things like, hey, we need to manage this. This is why Eagle Crest is making these decisions. And so those are some of the examples that I think of when, I wonder, of course, I'm not in the decision-making seat, right? So I'm not the one having to weigh those risks in this circumstance, but certainly lots of them come to light. I mean, another one that we struggle with a lot is housing, and there's a risk to this providing employee housing, and so the Eagle Crest Foundation helps manage that risk for CBJ Treasury. So that is one that we've engaged in directly, but there's lots of interactions that I know about, and far more that I don't, because I don't have that experience.
Mr. Steininger, and sorry, we'll do comments at some point, and obviously respecting your role as the liaison. But yeah, go ahead with your question. Pardon me.
Was somebody else in front of me in questions?
Maybe it was Mr. Kelly was in front of you, and then I had you. And did someone else raise their hand? Yeah.
Thank you. And I feel like the question I'm about to ask, I was going to originally ask it to Madam Manager and to Madam Mayor, but I feel like Madam Manager is probably mostly answered already. But I think I'll go ahead and ask it to them both in case there's anything she wants to expand on. My question is, let's say that the Assembly or the Committee of the Whole were to decide that instead of moving forward with introducing this demotion, that we wanted to take a different approach and maybe have a joint meeting and discuss our concerns and discuss things that we wanted to change. What are the things that Madam Mayor or Madam Manager would be interested in bringing to the board and having them do differently or manage the operation differently?
Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Kelly, for the question. I think I've already kind of alluded to it. We can have joint meetings and we can discuss things and everything else, but ultimately right now at the empowered board, they can do what they decide to do, and we cannot interfere with that. And that's one of the problems that I see right now. Right now, I think we're like up to $3 million in the hole with Eagle Crest, and I see a lot of more money that we will have to invest in it if it continues going. I'm literally trying to save EcoCrest. And I think with the empowered board making the decisions, I don't see the status quo changing. I just don't. I apologize for that. I know that makes people unhappy, but I just don't see it getting changed with the status quo. For instance, we're looking at a potential third-party operator. Is that something the assembly wants to do, or is that something that we're going to trust another board to do that lease and that kind of stuff? So again, I just think we need to have a little bit more say, and I think the only way to do that is for it to become an advisory board. When we did the aquatics board, we did try to do, first it was an empowered, and then we did a semi-empowered board, and that just did not work well at all. I was on the board during that process. It just did not work, because who's ever in charge of the Eagle Crest manager in this case ultimately has to give direction, and they can't have two bosses. So that's why I'm pushing for what I'm doing, and hopefully that answered your question, Mr. Kelly.
And Mr. Steininger next.
Thank you. My questions partially answered, I think, somewhat by Madam Mayor's comments. So if we chose not to go forward with this and to leave the empowered board, as I understand it, kind of our control to see the things that we desire as the assembly, and I guess I'm speaking for myself, but I think the broad desire to see a financial turnaround at Eagle Crest, to see a prioritization of safety and adequate maintenance. And if we want to avoid a kind of reversion to the status quo and an attitude towards, evolution of the ski area, aside from the power of the purse, which we can't really use because we know things will get worse if there are less staff or less funding for maintenance. So that power of ours of control over the board isn't there, or multiple meetings with the board. Are there other tools we could pursue other than disempowerment that might help us feel more certainty that the investments we're making will go in the direction that we want? And I don't know if this is a legal question for Mrs. Wright, if there are other models that we could be looking at, or if this is a policy question for Manager Kester or Madam Mayor.
Madam Manager.
Thank you. I'll take a stab. I think that, of course, you have the power of appointments, and 6 members can remove a board member. You also have the ability to give direction and, be very, very clear in your direction and establish, milestones and guidelines for that. Now, the consequences of not meeting that direction it comes back to your original point, right? Your power is the power of the purse and tender to remove members. But those are a couple of mechanisms where the assembly could be more involved. You, of course, cannot delegate risk. And so that is where, the manager's office is a little bit more directly involved, but struggles with that, as Assemblymember Hughes Candies mentioned. So, and I also wanted to mention that I do believe we have a joint meeting scheduled for March 4th with the Eagle Crest Board.
Ms. Wright.
Thank you. So if I could also add to that, this question came up to me late last week as well, of what you can and cannot do. So the ski area board was created by the voters. It must exist. The charter says there shall be a ski area board. All of their powers and authority is up to you. And so if you go to code to say, what are their roles? What are their powers? You can delegate some powers to them. Maybe it's, and I'm not making any suggestions because I do not know how to run a ski area, right? But you can say financial is us, operations is you. You can say summer is this person, winter is this person. You delegate all the powers by ordinance, and that can be done. If you do it after talking with the Eagle Crest board on who's best situated to do what, it's pretty broad what your options are available, and still keeping them an empowered board.
Ms. Huskanis, then Mr. Brooks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That just answered what I was going to say.
Mr. Brooks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And this is a question I've been asked by a lot of people, and it'd help, the folks in the crowd listening online and me understand better the process that's in place for how Eagle Crest manager currently gets appointed has lots of good avenues for the public input and participation through the board and the meetings that they have, and other avenues. But when it comes to the hiring practices within your office, there's pretty little influence or say that we have, or we can give the direction, but you have the ultimate sole decision. And as it's written now in the proposed ordinance, you would be hiring the Eagle Crest manager. But as you said earlier, you don't know how to run the mountain, so it would be in partnership with the board. So it is the intent to, add another step to how we already operate just to be able to spend more money quicker?
So I don't quite get the last part of that question, but I'm going to talk about the hiring process that we go through for our directors, and then maybe you can restate the second part of that question. So you are correct that the city manager has the authority to hire directors. There's no public requirements. There's, obviously we have employment law and all of those things that we have to comply with. And we do hire directors in a variety of ways. For example, when I was hired, I was directly appointed. So there was almost no process for that hire when I was hired as engineering and public works director, to be clear, not when I was hired as city manager. There was lots of process. Sorry. You guys, I could see everyone panicking. So that's an example where, the existing manager and deputy manager at the time were actively recruiting. We do that sometimes. We have hired recruitment firms to find candidates, and we've done really broad searches that way. We almost always have a kind of public component because it's a good idea to get buy-in from the public. It's a good idea to get buy-in from staff. So for example, with the fire chief hiring process, we brought in our candidates, and we had formal interviews, we had informal lunches, we had meetings with staff. Other examples we would we would definitely involve the advisory board. For example, the Parks and Rec director position, right? We asked for the opinion of Parks and Rec board members. We had a lunch where we invited the chair. So there are varying different degrees of involvement that we use for both the public and employees and boards. And I think that in this case, because just if you were to move forward with with changing and making that director a hire of the manager's office, it would be absolutely incumbent upon us to involve the board members because of their expertise and their involvement. However, it would still be 100% the manager's office decision. And I didn't catch the second part of your question, if you want to repeat that.
Thank you. So, with that clarification, what is the, essentially to what avail would it be making it harder for community input on the Eagle Crest manager hiring process, and having it be the sole discretion of you hiring that person? Like what's the trade-off to how it is now to going to that?
So I do not hire the Eagle Crest manager. So the board would be in charge of that decision. So I can't tell you what they would do. I will tell you that our HR director does help through all of our executive recruitments, including empowered boards. And it's a similar process, but the board has control over that decision. They have control over how public they want it to be. They have control over having interviews in executive session versus having interviews in public. So that is how the board would or has hired a manager is a question I cannot answer. I certainly have experienced it with other boards and, can let you know that our HR director is actively involved in those hires. But all of that process is up to the board when there's an empowered board.
Follow.
Were there, sure, if it's a follow-up, go ahead.
I meant what would be the trade-off of going to this proposed ordinance. We know how they do it already, but what's going to be the benefit of using your very valuable time to do what they were going to do anyways, but having less opportunity for assembly input and community input because it will be your sole decision at that point if we go to this ordinance.
I think that the benefit of having a manager hire is that my office is very well versed in hiring executives and executive level talent. We know what we're looking for in a communicator. We know what we're looking for in a manager, and someone who can interact with the public, someone who can run operations, has the skill sets needed to run an important department. So it's something that we do quite often. I have a lot of interaction with all of my department heads, and while they do different things, right? They manage different functions. There are a lot of those skill sets that are applicable, whether you're managing a ski area or you're managing a Parks and Recreation department or you're managing a fire department, right? It's managing people and budgets. And so what I can bring to the table is that depth of experience and knowledge in the executive recruitment and hiring process.
Very good. Any other questions from the assembly on this topic? Mr. Brooks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you tell us what current maintenance standard that we have in practice now that we could apply to Eagle Crest as an improvement?
So right now we do a condition assessment of our facilities. We have a building maintenance superintendent that prioritizes all of our maintenance projects. I believe there was a facilities assessment done recently for Eagle Crest that lines out some of those needs and upcoming needs. So I can't tell you what we would do differently, but I can tell you what we do for CBJ facilities. We manage those condition assessments. We have a deferred maintenance list. All of those projects get prioritized by a team that consists of department heads and engineers that prioritizes things like life safety, return on investment, and a whole long list of criteria on, how we prioritize those deferred maintenance projects.
And of course, things come up if we move into the next round, which I was going to, just knowing that, we're learning a lot, we're hearing a lot from the public. And anyway, it's a significant change. It's been this way for 40 something years. Anyway, it's a significant change, but I thought before a motion, or should there even be any, I would open it up to hear, where people are and different comments and things, because I have thoughts. And anyway, but I don't have a great sense of where everyone else is. So, would anyone like to go first? Ms. Wall, you raised your hand again. Mr. Sandinger as the liaison. No, I mean, and it doesn't have to be down the line, but it is helpful, I think, for the public as well as our colleagues and staff, the assembly members and staff to know where people kind of are, where they're at currently with this. Ms. Wall, if you would.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. I appreciate this conversation and I really appreciate Ms. Kester and her expertise in providing some of those answers. Should a motion be made tonight to move this forward, I would be in opposition for a lot of reasons. I'm not going to get into all of them because that would take me a while, depending on where this goes. Maybe we'll get there at some point. I share many of Madam Mayor's concerns and why she brought this forward, that, it's not lost on a lot of people that, I wasn't surprised when we had issues this year, because there has been a long time neglect and prioritizing short-term needs over long-term needs for Eagle Crest that no one person is responsible for. But I don't have any reason to believe that changing the structure would solve that problem. I've heard people say volunteer boards aren't good managers of things, and there are tens of thousands of amazing, complex nonprofit organizations that do things, much larger than what we're doing here. So I don't really believe that. I also think that, the assembly is just, as a political body, is just as likely as a empowered board to prioritize short-term needs over long-term needs. We as a body are dealing with 30 years of not raising utility rates here. We know what that's like. We have a group that's really dedicated to Eagle Crest. It may not be that way in the future, and that worries me. But I think ultimately why I'd be in opposition to this now is, thinking about governance, I really believe that form follows function. And we have big questions, the community, big questions to figure out about Eagle Crest. I think it still hasn't sunk in for everyone that the current Eagle Crest financial situation is not feasible. We cannot, as a community, continue supporting Eagle Crest at the level that we have the last few years, especially given the results of the election. And maybe we go down a path where summer tourism will change that situation. Maybe we divest from Eagle Crest. Maybe Eagle Crest is smaller, in the future. All of those things are on the table right now, as far as I'm concerned. And to me, those different paths have a lot. I would choose a different structure for each of those paths for how we move forward. And so I think that we have to focus our energy, assembly, staff, Eagle Crest community, Eagle Crest board, on answering those questions first, and then think about what the governance structure makes sense for that new reality. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wall. I'm just going to bring up the applause thing. We don't do it not because we don't want people to, if everyone's in the room's clapping and there's one person who wants to speak and they wouldn't be clapped for, we do it to respect everyone's voices. So I just please ask people to refrain from clapping. Thank you. Further comments from assembly members? Mr. Staniger. Ms. Uscandies, and then Mr. Kelly.
So I've been the Eagle Crest liaison since I joined the assembly back in, not last October, the October prior. Observing the board, we have a great board of people very dedicated to the ski area that are trying to do the right thing to move the ski area forward. They very much so are. But I don't feel like we have necessarily always helped in giving them all of the right tools to do so. And as I've had more conversations, as this idea came up, and as, kind of recent changes within the structure of Eagle Crest have happened, conversations, and learned kind of more about how that tool has not been working. And the concerns that I hear are concerns around, adequate maintenance of facilities, the, prioritization of the visible pieces of the operation, the skier experience, which is very important and should be prioritized, but prioritization of that over things that, in my view, are more important for the long-term success of the ski area, the proper maintenance and focus on the financial realities that the city faces. Because the financial reality the city is in is going to very much impact what we can and can't do for Eagle Crest. And we need to make sure that we're all in alignment. And we, no matter what what we think. We are going to be the ones making those decisions with an empowered board or not. As I mentioned earlier, one of our only powers is the purse. And every one of these problems is going to cost millions and millions of dollars. Eagle Crest doesn't have that. They don't have it in their enterprise fund. They won't have it in their enterprise fund if we continue going the way that we're going. It took city intervention to try to get the gondola running again, to try to get that project moving forward. It may have been too late. We'll figure that out when we hear more from the construction management contractor when we finally get that. Whether or not, that is successful, it will be a long time before there is enough money to make Eagle Crest work. So we will continue to be writing those checks. And if we are writing that big of checks, paid for not just by the passionate group of skiers, but paid for by the entire city, an entire city who just told us they're getting tired of paying as much as we've been asking them to pay. And I really worry that if we continue to be as hands-off on the operations side as we have been, that we're going to walk ourselves down a road where it fails. And it won't be that we can say, well, it was an empowered board. They made it fail, and blame our dedicated volunteer board members who are trying their hardest. But it will be because we made it fail. It will be our fault as the assembly, because at the end of the day, we're the ones who have the actual tools to make it possible. And it's painful that we may have to make a governance change to do that. But I can't, I've had so many conversations about this, and I can't figure out a way that we can get the tools to get there if we don't make some kind of change. I think that we shouldn't dive into this, by just throwing it on the next assembly meeting and getting it done. I think we owe it to everybody in the community to have a joint meeting with the Eagle Crest board to actually hash this out. And see, they gave us a very nice letter explaining their viewpoint. I would love to have a conversation with them as an entire assembly, not just me making some liaison comments at the end of a meeting to tell them when our next meeting is, but an actual frank public conversation where we can work through it and see if there is a way. If I'm wrong, I will be very happy if I'm wrong. If I'm wrong and that there's a way to preserve the structure and get those outcomes, I would love it, but I just haven't been able to figure that out. And the things that putting the director under Manager Kester provides the same sort of arm's length from operation we currently have, because we'll still be writing the checks. We'll still be involved in a lot of very heavy decisions, but it will give the general manager more ability to make some of those decisions about revenue without having to run it to this board and then see what the assembly thinks and see what other staff thinks. They will be able to be more nimble, address maintenance issues, work through those things, and then we can focus with the Eagle Crest board on the policy decisions that need to be made and make sure that the people beyond just the skiing community, but the entirety of Juneau who write these checks, that they trust what we're doing. And there's been very challenging, Eagle Crest is so incredibly important. I feel very weird being in this position, not really being a good skier at all. But it's something that we owe it to the people in Juneau and to the skiers to make sure that we give everything that we can to keep the mountain open. And this is hard. It's a difficult political decision, but I think ultimately for operations, in my opinion, it's the only route that I see. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Saniger. Ms. Hughes-Candies.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for those good comments. It's a good way to get it started. I guess I'll start by talking about empowered boards in general. Someone said, why do we have empowered boards? And love Juneau being the special snowflake that it is, but also very sincerely, coming from
voter initiatives, that's a really true representative or representation of like, this is something the community cares about and the community desires to see. And there has been a real drop in volunteerism just across the country post-COVID, but I have always loved about Juneau, we have so many citizen boards, and Juneau is a very invested community in Juneau, and I love that about the city. We have also had other empowered boards that at time have given us real panic attacks and heartburn, and I'm thinking of the hospital that went through a great period of instability and was in the news and ran through a couple of CEOs. And the assembly at that time, we used to have an assembly member who said, you know, you really can't turn your back and not pay attention to these because if we fall asleep at the wheel for a second, we may not have a hospital, and that would affect us hugely, which is true. And it's hard sometimes to reconcile that against, you know, I just said that Juneau is really invested and comes out to be on these boards. Sometimes we keep them open because no one's applied. That has happened many times in the years that I've been here. So all that to say, they are a tricky form of governance that has caused problems. And the airport board recently, we were having a super hard time getting anyone to be on the airport board. And when they needed to hire an exec or a new manager, we took that authority away from them and said, we'll do it together. We'll do it with some assembly members and some of the manager's office staff. And that caused feelings, but we felt like our connection to the lower 48 in the world was too important to not get involved. And you might be wondering, well, I'm talking about other boards, but I think that creates some precedent that they are tricky forms of governance, and at times we have taken away their authority. So we do not only have the power of the purse, we have the power of getting involved to different degrees at any time, because as you so rightly pointed out, ultimately this all rolls up to us. We are responsible for the entire community. We saw the Duncan report along the way. We've been, ever since the gondola, we've been more involved with Eagle Crest, and the manager's office has been more involved with Eagle Crest. One of the things the Duncan report said was, you've got a heck of a good Eagle Crest board, but it is nearly impossible to address all the problems and situations that Eagle Crest is dealing with right now with this form of governance. So just making you aware of that. So that was one thing that we have in our hopper as well. And I will also say, I guess I'll preface all of this because it sounds like I'm going down a certain road by saying, if someone was to make a motion to move this forward tonight to the full assembly, I would not support it, because I do not see that as like, yes, this is the right solution to go this way. But I also had a conversation with a very dedicated member of the Eagle Crest, the ski community, I would say, who called me and wanted to talk about this issue. And I said, I'm not surprised the mayor brought this forward, because we have to get involved. We have to do something. So those are the two things that I'm trying to hold in my mind right now. I don't necessarily see this yet as like the right way to go, but I think the assembly is going to have to get more involved because of where we are right now. I will say that our staff is larger than other staffs. It has the most money compared to other staff. We are also 9 volunteers. But we have a lot of tools at our disposal. We have a really talented staff at our disposal. So I think the right way to think of it is, it's not that we have some expertise knowledge, but what we do have is a lot more resources. So I do feel comfortable saying, well, we're a little bit more resourced than some of our excellent facilities are. I'm interested in personally seeing what a modified option might look like after a conversation with the board. Definitely, for
for me, I think the next step is absolutely need to be able to have a really blunt, honest conversation with the board, whose service I appreciate. I watched their board meeting the other night, and I have gone back and watched other board meetings that I was not in attendance. Love that ability to. That's how I spend my Friday nights, watching old Zooms of CBJ Eagle Crest meetings. But it's really helpful, and but we need to be able to have that conversation, really a back and forth conversation on that, because I do think there are modified versions, as the attorney pointed out. It can look like a lot of things. It can look like us taking the pieces that we need to feel comfortable with. And then in all of this, I will just add that the budget realities that is like going to sound like a broken record up here. And but every decision we make now, we're living in a different world after that election, that we have to make all of our decisions through that lens. The first paragraph of the letter from the Eagle Crest Board said, as a governing body of one of Juneau's most important community assets. And I love that we have Eagle Crest, and I love it as a community asset. But for the work that we do up here, I would say that the wastewater utility, the hospital, the cops, the fire, the airport that connects us to the lower 48, those are always going to come. Those are more important to me. Those are more important community facilities. So I love it, and I want us to figure out what we can do, whatever it is that preserves Eagle Crest. And that's like the tightrope we're walking right now. It might be this, it might be that, but it's got to live in this new world. And a ski hill, if the public wants us to be like a smaller cities don't have a lot of things. And most smaller cities don't have ski hills. And I'm not saying that I want that. And I'm not saying that one election doesn't make the community say, actually, we do want to pay for services and we'll figure out some revenue to save the things we love. That's also a future possibility. But in the world we're living in right now, Eagle Crest has to live in that world. And I wouldn't choose for that. I keep saying, well, I didn't vote for that, but that is what passed. And so we have to figure out how to fit Eagle Crest into that. And those are all, that's kind of where I am right now. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Ms. Uscandies. Mr. Kelly.
Thank you. I'll start off by thanking the mayor for bringing this forward. It's given me the opportunity to do a deep dive into this, to listen to meetings, to hear from employees, to hear from interested constituents, and it's uncovered some issues that weren't really at my forefront beforehand. But I also come from a union represented background. In my other job, I am union represented, and I know if my boss decided to demote me, my business managers would have some real issues with that, without going through some sort of process where we're saying, how can you improve? What can you do different? What would we like to see Eagle Crest or the Eagle Crest Board do differently? I think I am with Ms. Uscandies in saying that I'm interested in having a conversation with the Eagle Crest Board, and I am interested in perhaps pursuing a more modified option that maybe addresses some of Mr. Steininger's concerns. We are footing the bill for this. We should maybe have a little more authority. So maybe there's some middle ground for that, and I would be interested in pursuing that. But as it is, I will not be supporting moving this ordinance to the full assembly.
Ms. Hall.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I would, but I'm kind of on the fence on this. Leading up to the meeting on March 4th, I would love to see pros and cons laid out for each model. by the city, by staff, by Eagle Crest board, and by Eagle Crest staff, so we can just really have a good conversation, clear up any misconceptions. I think we're all on the same page. We love Eagle Crest. We want to see it succeed. But throughout my year and a half on the assembly, I've seen so much vitriol and just really not very kind behavior directed at board members and staff. And I think, my gosh, we all need to come together and move forward and collaboratively problem solve on this. And so that's why I'm, again, not 100% sure on this. I think we have had some wonderful board members and incredible depth of experience with the current board. It would be nice to let this play out a bit, but sitting on the liaison to some other boards, it's and commission, sometimes it's very challenging to get people to even show up, which kind of hampers the ability to get business done. And so, we're fortunate now, everyone's pretty galvanized and focused on this, but will this be the same case 5 years from now? So yeah, it's community gym. We want to preserve it, but let's really carefully, collaboratively weigh the pros and cons from every angle. And maybe we could have the pros and cons before the March 4th meeting. So, but thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hall. Others, or Mr. Brooks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to thank everyone too for all the input and outreach and all the information, phone calls. It's all been really awesome digging into it and delving in. But as it, stands, looking at it far, far away, both avenues aren't going to save the community any money currently. It's still going to be expenditures. It's still going to be a financial burden, but as it, if it's going to cost money either way, I don't see why we necessarily have to bring it into under our control fully, but it's definitely, worth heavily considering that when it gets down to this crucial point, if we don't make good on our financial obligations regarding the gondola project, that real decisions and considerations will be made in looking at leasing to private operations, whether that's Gold Belt or whether that's the stakeholders board and all the other users of the mountain forming their own entity to trying to work out some sort of contracting deal with the city. But I don't see it getting good financially immediately, but I just want to say that, if it gets to that, tough point, God forbid, that whoever is in the full control is willing and ready to make a real decision.
Thank you, Mr. Brooks. Ms. Atkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm gonna keep it brief because Mr. Steininger and Ms. Hughes-Candies, I think, pretty accurately reflected where I am at. I am also okay with taking time to think about this because this is a very important and impactful decision. What concerns me most is that we do fund Eagle Crest quite a bit, as Mr. Steininger said, with money from taxpayers of the city and borough of Juneau at large. And it's very important to me, and I know to everyone on this body, that we make careful decisions and we are using that money in a really respectful way. And there have been multiple times as we've dealt with Eagle Crest, where I have gone to the city manager, deputy city manager, and said, is this really all the funding they need? They say that they will be able to complete this project with this funding. Is that true? And they will say, I can't verify that. I don't have access to that information. And that's really troubling to me. If we are making these funding decisions with money from taxpayers, we need to know that all the facts, we need to know that we will actually accomplish what we are intending to accomplish with these funds. And I think it is irresponsible to not have that certainty.
I don't know if there is a halfway point in which we have an empowered board and we have access to that information, but it can't continue to be a black box if we are going to be funding it at the levels we're going to be funding it at. And I think, as people have mentioned, there's no path forward on Eagle Crest that doesn't involve lots of city money. So I have no problem with an empowered board, but there is a disconnect now that does need to be fixed, and I'm not sure there is a midway point. If there is one, I'm excited for it, and I'm excited to explore that. But as it stands right now, this is the path I see forward, and I would love to be proven wrong. But we have to be responsible caretakers of city money.
Thank you, Ms. Atkinson. I'll hop in because I think everyone else has spoken. I guess, one thing and probably a key thing that I want to say first, I believe this assembly, I support Eagle Crest. We put a $3 million IOU in the restricted budget reserve during the last budget process from Eagle Crest. I've never seen us do that for anything else. The value Eagle Crest provides, not everyone skis, but a lot of people do. And there would be, I would say, hundreds, if not, the mayor hadn't spoken either. There will be people that would not come to Juneau, would not move to Juneau, not consider moving to Juneau, would leave Juneau. It is an important factor for a lot of people and, people that we want, younger people. Also, maybe our seniors who maybe would spend all their winter in Arizona. Anyway, it is an important facility. It's also a gem of a facility for not just wintertime operations. And I think it has a tremendous opportunity to become a gem and, a revenue generator, and to be a great ski hill is a great summer area. In terms of actions tonight, I also am probably on a go a little bit slower. I will say maybe deep down in the end, should we have some of these empowered boards? I do question that. I think they work at certain times when you have a manager, executive, whatever, who is strong enough to tell a board, here's what we need to do, and a board that is keeping the big picture in mind. They know their role. They know that they have to do hard things, even though they're going to get a bunch of angry emails and, maybe raise rates and do these things. When those things align, I think it can work. I think if either of those are not aligned, they do not work. And Mrs. Hugh Scandies gave us examples that we have seen where that was the case. I think we have an excellent and very strong board. This letter and knowing what you are working on from conversations in your meetings I've had with individual board members, you are focused, I think, on the key things. And to be honest, I very much want your help on them because I don't have the time and I don't have the expertise to do some of these things. And obviously, summer operations, gondola will need to integrate seamlessly with Eagle Crest operations as a ski home. I still have questions that I would need answered. This risk exposure question, what do the different roles look like? We definitely owe it to the board, and I want to have that conversation with the board to discuss, things moving forward. I'm concerned about trying to do something now, a restructure when we need to focus. The clock is ticking on the gondola and it needs to happen or we are in deep trouble. And if we're like, oh, do we need to change the business cards or is it a different, that takes time and energy that I don't know if now is the time to be doing that on. That being said, I think this board is strong. I am considering, and I have a couple of weeks till our next assembly meeting to ask more and discuss more if our city manager staff needs to be more involved in the hiring of the next GM. I do not know that, but I will let you know that is in my mind. Because we want this to succeed, it is that important. And again, in the far off world, is an empowered board the right thing? The public engagement and support from a board the feedback they do give to staff is invaluable. One person cannot know everything and can consider everything. But I do wonder, just from a big picture, in the big picture of an Eagle Crest that will always be and will do what it needs to be an excellent ski hill. I do have questions, as I honestly do for some of our other ones. Should there be an empowered board, period? But I do not know if now is the time to really, mix all this up. And those were my comments. Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I didn't have any more comments because I've already talked. I had a motion.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Go ahead.
So I would move to hold serial ordinance serial number 2026 XX for now in the committee of the whole till after the Eagle Crest board meeting, joint meeting. Sorry, speaking well, the Eagle Crest Assembly joint meeting, which I believe is on March 4th. And if I may speak to that briefly.
Sure.
The reason I was moving this, trying to move this tonight, was February 9th, it would be introduced, and March 9th, which is after the joint meeting, it would come to the full assembly, because I know that time is a critical factor here, but I can see that I am moving faster than the assembly is. So if people are more comfortable holding this in committee till after we speak with Eagle Crest Board, I can live with that.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll object for just a quick question. The March 4th meeting, my sense was that it was a finance, is it a finance meeting? But is it are we also planning it to be like we're all sitting around a table and can, have time to talk?
So thank you for that question. The chair has given direction to have some joint meetings during these early finance slots because we want to hear from our empowered boards, specifically on budget issues, but other things as well, to take really good advantage of your time now, knowing that springtime will be very full with some difficult decisions. We had originally really wanted to bring like the Eagle Crest budget and the gondola to you. I don't think we'll be prepared to have the full gondola discussion, and obviously you have plenty to talk about. So the exact agenda of that joint meeting, I have yet to chat with the Finance Committee Chair and the Deputy Mayor about, but I do know we have a agenda that's been, a schedule for Finance Committee meetings that's been published that puts in some of those joint meetings. So TBD on those details, but I know we at least have a placeholder there.
Finance Chair Wall.
Ms. Kester did a good job talking about the intent. The intent was always to sit down at a shared table with the board on that night, in addition to reviewing their budget and taking action as a body on other finance committee agenda items later in the evening. So if I don't see a reason, if this is a priority for this group, that we could include that discussion. I will say that, we got to talk about money too, so.
Be a long chat, but it seems like we're all aligned on scheduling at least, so they'll all be there. Okay. Ms. Walk, yeah, go ahead and then I'll get you to Mr. Steininger.
Just to switch topics, I was going to object to the mayor's motion. I am not opposed to continuing this conversation. I am nervous about it for two reasons. One, the hiring of the GM, maybe we don't figure this out now, but if I was applying for that job, I would want some clarity on who my boss was going to be and what the structure of the board would be. And so I guess maybe I'd ask somebody to come back with recommendations on how we would manage that. In my mind, we either, are in some interim period for a long time while we figure this out, or we truly pause this conversation for a lengthy period of time and we move forward on hiring a GM. So I think I'm going to object to this because I would almost rather us drop this conversation for a while now, instead of continuing it and muddying the waters with hiring a new GM, but open to suggestions on that.
Mr. Steininger, you had your hand raised. I do have a thought to Ms. Wall's last question but I'd defer to you if you want to speak.
Well, I had a thought to her first point, so maybe I should go first.
Go ahead.
On thinking about the joint meeting that is scheduled for March 4th. We're gonna have a lot to talk about Eagle Crest budget wise. I'm wondering if it might be a better idea to have the conversation about board structure be its own meeting. I feel like there is enough to fill an entire meeting in that conversation alone.
Yeah, I mean, I'd have to leave that up to the chair in terms, I mean,
Well,
we can always stay long. I mean, we can stay a long time in here.
we can stay up like, really, we're getting a little loud at, but maybe a suggestion as a joint committee of the whole meeting, possibly separate from.
Okay.
I don't know what the calendar looks like. Yeah.
I think the city manager and Ms. Wall and I and the mayor, we can take a look at how to structure it so we have, the ability to discuss what we need and also keep our other work going. Ms. Wall, I heard your comment. I kind of heard one thought I had is obviously we're taking in a lot of info, hearing each other's viewpoints. One thought would be we could allow the mayor's motion to continue. We can think, and then in 2 weeks' time, we do have a full assembly meeting. I would like to talk to others about, maybe it's not doing an advisory board, but do we need to add a new duty to the list of this board? I don't know. Like there's some other things. Maybe we could, you do what you need to do. But if this goes through, of course, any member at an assembly meeting, we could say, I move to table for whatever, or take other options. So just in terms of, I don't have the greatest picture right now, and I could use a little time and need conversations. Miss Atkinson.
The city attorney is looking a little skeptical of that, so.
As are others. Mr. Deputy Mayor, so you cannot bring this up unless it's on an agenda later. So you're putting it on an agenda. You could not table it in 2 weeks or table it in 3 weeks. It has to be on an agenda. So you're voting tonight to potentially put it on March 4th.
Sure.
That's when it will be on. On March 4th, you could table it immediately, but you can't do anything in the interim. Does that make sense?
Yep. We could always talk about it.
Mr. Chair.
Yep.
I'm saying that to bring this ordinance
Madam
to.
Mayor, sorry, we're still having that kind of choppy audio that we were experiencing before, so.
Sorry about that. I'm just making sure my motion was to have the meeting or to keep this in the committee of the whole till after that March 4th meeting. It was not to talk about this at the March 4th meeting.
Oh, okay. And then I guess you could leave it up to me to bring it back. I mean, I guess we'd leave it in committee, and then if we had a direction we wanted to go at the regular assembly, we could. So I'm struggling procedurally.
Give us 1 second.
yeah.
So it would, the motion then as made by the mayor, if it would be the motion to hold ordinance 2026 XX in the committee of the whole until after the Eagle Crest joint meeting on March 4th, which would mean March 16th is going to be your next discussion of Eagle Crest board.
Madam Mayor, did you hear that? And it was your intention to have it go at that next meeting or not?
Yes, I would like to have it at the next meeting because we need to make a decision on this one, the other.
Miss Candies.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I need clarity on, to me, when we hold something in committee, it stays in committee. So I need to understand what that March 16th meeting is, or when you say leave it to you, I didn't get that last bit. I understand the mayor's desire for speed, but all we're doing right now is leaving it in the cow
That's right.
Then we're having a meeting with Eagle Crest on board on the 4th.
That's right.
And then what is this? And then to me, it's just hanging out. It's lurking in the cow, waiting for us to come back to the cow.
That's right. So
Exactly.
the 16th is the next cow.
Okay, great. Thank you. That matches my understanding.
Is everyone clear on the motion from the mayor? Ms. Hall?
So I'm a little confused. Does this mean at the joint meeting, we're just discussing the budget and finances with Eagle Crest or the board structure as well?
I would imagine it will be a wide-ranging conversation, including board structure. Yeah. So. Very good. Ms. Wall?
I'll try an amendment and if it fails, that's cool too. But I would, instead of holding it in committee till that meeting, I would move that we table for 1 year. Just so we can figure out where Eagle Crest is going, hire a new GM, and then revisit the conversation.
Thank you, Ms. Wall. Ms. Atkinson?
I'm going to object to that. I understand Ms. Wall's intention there, but I do think that this conversation needs to be had. And I worry sometimes with big, somewhat scary political decisions like this, we have a tendency to want to delay making a decision one way or another. And that I think often has not turned out super well. So I would rather we keep this on our plate now and make a decision, especially, as I said, because we are going to be making big funding decisions on Eagle Crest, and this is very pertinent to those decisions.
Okay, so we had a motion from the mayor and, or excuse me, yes, we had a motion from the mayor and now Ms. Wall is trying to amend it with a tabling motion, I guess, so.
That's correct. And so now, and you've got an objection, so
Yeah.
you need to have a roll call vote
Sure.
on the amendment.
Yeah.
That's right.
So we have objection, the mayor has her hand raised.
As a point of order, since the motion was to table, is it debatable?
Tabling motions are not debatable.
Brief eddies. Oh, there we go. Very good. I'll bring us back into session and Ms. Wall, would you like to restate your motion?
It would be to amend the motion so that instead of keeping in the committee, we are postponing until the first committee of the whole in January 2027.
Thank you, Ms. Wall, and that is a debatable motion. So I did see a hand from Mayor Weldon. Ms. Uscandies, anyway. Yes, Mayor Weldon.
I appreciate Ms. Wall's motion, but I think a year is way too long. I don't think Eagle Crest will survive a year without figuring out a path forward, which could involve the gondola, which could involve other big financial things. And again, I'm not willing to spend a ton of money from the community on Eagle Crest if we don't have some kind of oversight on it.
Thank you, Mayor Weldon. Other objections? Ms. Candies.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think from my earlier comments, people will understand why I am objecting to this course of action. For me, letting it ride for a year feels like, I didn't seek to add Eagle Crest to right now what we're dealing with. We got a whole heck of a lot of other things that are very important that we're dealing with, but I feel like due to variables shifting, sometimes something gets bumped up and we have to deal with it. So I'm not saying that not saying that this course of action is how we'll deal with it, but certainly from the conversation we've had tonight and the questions that we've had tonight, I will have continued conversation with staff. I'll have continued conversation with the community. And I suspect that between those conversations and the meetings to come, I will want to do something prior to a year. And so for that reason, I can't support this motion. Thanks.
Ms. Candies. I'll comment too. I'll object. I think I want to just, I may be joining Ms. Wall if she were to make this motion in March. I'm not sure, but I want to have some more time to talk about it and in between them, keep it, anyway, keep evaluating it. Again, you said my thoughts, but I won't support it at this time. We have a motion on the floor with objection. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
The motion to amend, to postpone the ordinance establishing the City and Borough Eagle Crest Recreation Area Department and Recreation and Ski Area Advisory Board to the first cow in 2027. Ms. Wool.
Yes.
Mayor Weldon.
No.
Ms. Candies.
No.
Mr. Kelly.
No.
Ms. Hall.
Nope.
Mr. Steininger.
No.
Mr. Brooks.
Yes.
Ms. Atkinson.
No.
Deputy Mayor Smith.
No.
Motion fails, 2 yeas, 7 nays.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Now we have the mayor's motion before us. Did anyone need clarity on what that was? Yes. Would you like her to restate the motion? Okay, very good. Madam Mayor, would you restate your motion?
I would move to hold ordinance 2026-XX in the committee of the whole until after the joint Eagle Crest Assembly board meetings.
And I think we do know that means it would pop up at that March.
Yeah, so that means
16th.
it would come out on March 16th.
Very good. We've heard the motion. Are there objections to the motion? Seeing none, that motion is adopted. Thank you. That moves us to our, I believe, unless anyone has us in motions, that would move us to our next item. But before that, we will take a 10-minute break. Well, we can do 12 minutes, right? Come back at 8, please. I'll call us back into session. Our next agenda item is, I'll call us back into session. Our next agenda item is the Douglas West Juneau Area Plan. I think we probably are aware of the trajectory that this has been. It's came to the assembly, sent it back to the committee of the whole. Hope people had plenty of time to read it. We've seen some memos, also some things that outline the extensive public process that's gone into this area plan. Did I see 41 meetings in there? I can't remember, but it was a lot. But that was 41 meeting of the advisory committee. But anyway, lots and lots of public process. Madam Manager, did you want to kick this one off?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Smith. As you alluded to, this area plan has been a multi-year process culminating really in the steering committee's vision for the community as amended by the Planning Commission. I think it's important to note that our area plans and really our comprehensive plan are aspirational in nature and non-binding. So I just want to draw your attention to Title 49, where it talks about the comprehensive plan and a couple of sections of code that are relevant as you think about the plan, because there are all kinds of little details in there that you can be like, wait, but are we really going to do that? Are we not going to do that? What sort of the chances that we would do that? And so to try to bring us back up, the comprehensive plan is adopted by the Assembly by ordinance and contain policies that guide and direct the public and private land use activities in the city and borough. The implementation of such policies includes the adoption of ordinances in this title. Where there is conflict between the comprehensive plan and any ordinance adopted under or pursuant to this title, such ordinance shall take precedence over the comprehensive plan. So that's to say, what the Assembly does, the action the Assembly takes, is the most important action. It's not dictated by something that is in the comprehensive plan. Of course, the comprehensive plan is a guiding document, right? So your public will say, hey, you said you were going to do this in the comprehensive plan, and we will work towards the goals in the comprehensive plan. The other section of Title 49, 4905-200 is important. There are no rights created. The goals and policies set forth in the comprehensive plan are aspirational in nature and are not intended to commit the city and borough to a particular action, schedule, or methodology. So I just think that frame of mind is important when we talk about just such a big document that's been through a lot of public process and really is the culmination of lots of community input and lots of ideas. I do want to briefly talk about kind of one of the most controversial pieces of the plan. The steering committee had recommended that the 17 acres on Douglas behind Fifth Street, the 6th Street, be changed to a park designation. And the Planning Commission removed that, acknowledging that stretch of land has long been identified by the city and borough for potential development. I want to note that we haven't, invested in any infrastructure, or we're not actively developing that property, but it has been identified in our land management plan as available for housing. And so the Planning Commission, recognizing that, withdrew that piece of the plan. There are other amendments that the Planning Commission made. Those are covered in your memo. We have Planning Manager Shambor here to answer any questions. And with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Manager. And I asked at a previous meeting, but just to confirm, the amendments made by the Planning Commission are like, unless we undo them, they will be implemented into the final version of the plan.
Yes, you're correct.
Very good. Thank you. Questions from the Assembly? Mr. Kelly.
Thank you. Following that last assembly meeting where we discussed this, I did have one of the testifiers, Ms. Bookless. I believe she was also one of the former advisory members, come and talk to me about some of the concerns that she had during my office hours. And I guess one of them was kind of like the steepness of the slope and the tendency of runoff to affect people's structures, flood people's basements, et cetera. I guess my question is kind of, it sounds like we haven't really done so much as far as like planning and developing this area so far, but when we do get to that point, Is that something that would be addressed later? Is that something that the planning commission would bring up when somebody asked for a permit, that they would come up with regulations around that? Or is that something that we would need to address in some way?
Madam Manager.
Yes, so our general engineering department, general engineering division within the engineering and public works department permits development of that nature. So anytime that you're going to be doing earth moving that could potentially affect the drainage of your neighbors, you have to get that permitted. And that is where we care for downstream effects, downstream impacts of that development. So, you know, certainly in the instance of development of a large subdivision, often that means incorporating swales, culverts. Sometimes that even means upsizing downstream infrastructure. It all really just depends on the nature of the project.
I had a question. You know, one thing I noticed in here, I'm looking to find it, and is there was something about Mount Jumbo Gym and like developing it as a community center. Great, you know, possibly, I guess, and maybe you kind of spoke to it as an aspirational thing. Like at one point I was like, should I strike that? So it's, but it's not like if that goes in the plan, you're firing up like a Mount Jumbo Community Center CIP and gonna be like putting money in it tomorrow, right? It's an aspirational thing, but it doesn't mean like that's exactly what's happening up there.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Smith. You're correct. The assembly would have to give that direction and there'd be a lot of public conversation. Again, it's really just a guiding document that identifies needs that the community has expressed.
Very good, thank you. Other questions, comments? Anyway, a motion. So it's been introduced. We sent it back to the committee of the whole. So I believe should it be desired, we would now be, you know, forwarding it back to the assembly for public hearing. Ms. Wall.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. I move that the committee of the whole forward to the full assembly ordinance. I'll keep going. Forward to the full assembly ordinance 2025-42.
Thank you, Ms. Wall. Mayor Weldon, I see your hand was raised.
Sorry, I was just a little quick with my hand. Apologize for that, but I will object. I appreciate the city manager saying that this is aspirational, but just reading through it, life has changed, as we all said in the last conversation. You know, you mentioned Mount Jumbo as a community hub. They want to expand hours at Douglas Library. Well, quite frankly, we'll be lucky to have a Douglas Library. They want to enhance telecommuting opportunities, do various studies. There's just so much that is costing stuff that I have a hard time adopting this as an ordinance, just because there's just too many things that we're just saying, you know, appreciate everybody's time working and we'll adopt it, but we're really not going to follow it. That doesn't make sense to me. So.
Very good. You're objecting. I have other hands raised. Mr. Kelly.
Thank you. I guess I object to ask the mayor a question. If this weren't passed or if this weren't brought back to the assembly, what would your intention be? Would your intention be that it goes back out for public process again, or how would you want to update it?
Madam Mayor.
I appreciate the question, Mr. Kelly. I don't think it should go out in public process again. I think we've spent a lot of time on this. At this point, I think it's just too detailed, and the best that I think answer I could come with is that we pass it as a resolution rather than an ordinance.
Madam Mayor, your last sentence was pass it as a resolution and not an ordinance. Is that correct?
That is correct. Sorry.
Nope.
Apologize for the internet.
Very good. Ms. Wall.
question for staff. I know we've been here before. We had the same debate with the downtown area plan. If, and I don't know if we have Ms. Lawhorn on the line, but, or maybe Mr. Schomburg to talk about the difference between passing this as an ordinance versus a resolution.
The attorney is grabbing her mic, so Ms. Wright.
I can do it. So I was asked this question today. I did go back and look. We've always passed these via ordinance. We had this question with the blueprint downtown, and I think that the decision was made because we've always done it by ordinance to continue doing that. Ordinances are of a permanent nature. Resolutions are more policy oriented and temporary in nature. I will say that the comprehensive plan under 4905-200, the comprehensive plan must be adopted by ordinance, and these are being adopted into the comprehensive plan. So I that makes sense to me why we've always done it by ordinance.
I'll remove my objection, but if I could speak to my original motion now that there's an objection.
Thank you. Go ahead, Ms. Wall.
You know, I understand where Mayor Weldon's coming from. I think, you know, when I looked at this list, I looked at some of these things and said, that's going to be a while. But, you know, funding pictures and priorities change. You know, when I look at the other area plans, they're aspirational. They're things that people want in our community someday, and they speak to our values. If I saw something in here that I felt like was, you know, the opposite of what I would want to happen somewhere in my perfect world, then I would object to it. But, you know, even if some of these things are going to be unlikely to happen soon, I think it's still important to adopt them into our plan as envisioned by the community, even if that was with more rose-colored glasses than we have today.
Thank you, Ms. Wall. Ms. Uscandies.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I'll just say briefly, I appreciate where Mayor Weldon is coming from. I think I am fine with adopting this, knowing that they are of an aspirational nature. I will say that through my time on the Assembly, even as we are in the midst of doing a new comp plan right now, have I gone back and forth wildly between saying planning is a lie, planning is a scam, we shouldn't do long-term planning, because, you know, you can save you the money and tell you what the comp plan's going to say. Generally, usually they say, we want, you know, areas where we feel safe and healthy, and there's housing and there's recreational activities and all these things. But they also, then I flip back on the day, depending on when you ask me, and I'll say planning is, you know, I would say whatever the Alaskan Planning Association would say. There's a lot of value in planning. Today, I'm clearly leaning that way. But all that to say, I've seen numerous decisions where the Assembly, something comes up and the comp plan says one thing, or, you know, it's aspirational, this or that. And the Assembly, if it goes against what the Assembly at that time wants to do, they'll say, oh, we make an exception. Oh, do we need an ordinance to make an exception? And they'll do whatever they need to do to continue on. So knowing that it's not going to handcuff anyone, and knowing how much work went into it, I am happy to adopt it.
Thank you, Ms. Uscandies. So the motion on the floor was to move it forward for public hearing. Is there further objection to that motion? I had one from the mayor. Seeing none, we have a motion on the floor and objection. Would we call the roll?
Motion to move ordinance 2025-42 to the full assembly for public hearing. Ms. Wool.
Yes.
Mayor Weldon.
No.
Mr. Brooks.
Yes.
Ms. Hall.
Yes.
Mr. Steininger.
Yes.
Ms. Atkinson.
Yes.
Mr. Kelly.
Yes.
Ms. Uscandies.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Smith.
Yes.
Motion carries 8 yeas, 1 nay.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. That moves us through that item. Let me get back to my agenda. Thank you, Mr. Chambor and other members of CDD that worked so long on this. Okay. Back to our last item on the agenda, assembly goals. I guess I'll just say, we worked on these in the retreat. People were assigned to, bring some of them back as for consideration by the assembly. There was a delay in there. But now we have a draft of goals that had been submitted and Mr. Barr, I believe, put together. These will be formally adopted at the next assembly meeting. Is that correct, Madam Manager?
That is certainly my aspiration.
Very good. Okay, so that could happen. So I guess I just want to phrase it a little bit this way. There's still another bite at the apple. And my kind of thought would be, the retreat now is so far away, I can't remember a thing. But I can remember a lot, but I can't remember how people felt on each individual goal. So, I think a hope would be we look at the new ones. If there's not the votes to put them in, we can take them out. If people still want to wordsmith, there's still that other option. But to me, it might make sense for our goal to be like, yes, these goals in general are the ones we're good to have at the regular assembly meeting in 2 weeks' time, knowing there could still be little bits of things or amendments at that time as well. So that's my thought. I think the item, I don't know how if you had thought further about how to do this efficiently.
Thank you, Deputy
Take
Mayor
any
Smith.
ideas.
I'll just note that the changes that were made, there have been tweaks to each, not all of the goals, but some of the goals, there were tweaks that happened while we were at the retreat. The new goals are highlighted in either blue or green. The blue goals, there's been consensus on, and the green goals still need work. I think, did I have that right? I feel like that's flipped. I think blue still needs work only because you're called out in the notes if you still need to work on that. So all of that is to say there's really only like two things that still need some tweaking. So I would love a motion to move this forward to the assembly for adoption. I appreciate that it was a lay down item. But it's really important, like for the public to have something to look at and just for us as staff to be able to look to this.
Yep. Sounds good.
Yeah, Deputy Manager Barr is confirming that I had it switched. Blue means there's still some work to do, which means you only have 2 that still need work.
Very good. I will flag, I believe, on the top of page 2, and we can go through these goal by goal and then implement action. But I believe actually the economic development, the top one in that, it has been changed and probably should be highlighted because Ms. Wall and I worked on that one. So it's the one regarding to tourism or something.
As far as the key goes, I want to acknowledge that many of them have been changed and are not highlighted. The only ones that are highlighted are new. So that you will see lots of these goals have been tweaked.
Yeah.
So probably bears a closer read.
Sure.
The highlights just are new goals.
Yep. And I realize we all just got these today. So, Mr. Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think I would ask what direction you would prefer on this. So this is the one that you, myself, and Ms. Hall were assigned on page 4. Despite the extension, we really just finalized the language we wanted to use this afternoon and did not get it to Deputy Manager Barr in time to get into the packet. So would your intent be that maybe I move to amend it so that way the assembly is exposed to the language, or what would be easiest?
Well, I would think maybe we can start from the front. And then on that one, and maybe we can start from the front, the ones that are highlighted or new. I don't think there ever was a up down on some of these. I think it was like, okay, go work on them and bring something back. And who knows, there might be 5 people who don't want some of these things. So maybe my thought would be to go through the new ones and do a, like, I don't know, can we shouldn't do thumbs up. I feel like that's been bad in the past. Okay, maybe we can like move them and then, people can be, if there's objection, we can say why, and if people want to change them, the team could go back. Mr. Brooks, would you like to move the goal we worked on, assuming you like it, on the first page? So we're in the housing goal section.
I don't know if you saw the last email I'd sent you, but I still wanted to work on that and do a little bit of wordsmithing on that.
Sure. And that's fine. We still have another meeting to do that. I guess, do you want to move it forward or do you want?
Yeah.
Okay.
I move that we implement actions for housing to continue to pursue zoning amendments that support and increase the incremental infill development opportunities.
Very good. And I will just give a little background. We did, work with Mr. Dumichel from Title 49. He kind of, anyway, trying to find the right balance of, the right level of an assembly goal, I guess. Are there objections to that being added? Very good. The next one, I believe, is maybe Miss Hall and I. It's in green. What does green mean versus blue? Anyway.
It just means that the assembly members assigned reached a consensus on the language.
Okay, very good, very good. So, Ms. Hall, would you like to move the addition of that item?
I move the new goal to, under housing, evaluate support of existing community land trust.
Any objection to that being added? Very good. Moving on. Mr. Steininger.
I want to know, because it's on this page and it's also on the next page. I think we're using the wrong word in the heading. I think it should be ensure, not usher, like EN. One, housing, usher, adequate and affordable housing. I think it should be ensure adequate and affordable housing.
Where are we
I
looking?
Googled it. I'm not the best at grammar. I Googled it and I think.
Oh, in the actual high level. Oh, okay. So it should be ensure.
Yeah.
Do you want to move that as a change?
Yeah, I'd move to change assure to ensure in all the places where appropriate.
Does anyone need to consult the dictionary before we vote? Okay, see no objection to that motion. That's adopted. And again, we know you just had the day. You can still look through. I would anyway, take a look at the different ones, because who knows what someone put in there. All right, let's go to, I'm on to page 3 with the green items. We see 2 new assembly goals. Would anyone like to make a motion to have those included? Mr. Kelly.
Sure, I'll go ahead and move the first one. I move that we add as an implementing action to goal number, oops, I just lost, okay. To goal number 3, increase public engagement and outreach in developing a sustainable operating budget that balances community priorities with reduced sales and property tax revenue.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Any objection to adding that? Seeing none. Next one is below there. I don't know. I thought this was maybe had originated from Mr. Brooks, but would anyone like to move that item? Improving public access to CBJ financial information. Mr. Brooks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that for sustainable budget and organization goals, we move investigate and implement methods to improve public access to CBJ financial information.
Ms. Wall.
I'm going to object. I probably lost last time, which is why it's here, but I'll try anyways. I just feel like, we could fill this list with a bunch of things that we try to do every day. And so if this is in here, I feel like that means we're doing, a bunch more work on something. I think we're doing a lot of education around our budget as part of the intensive budget public engagement process. So I don't want to see more effort. But again, I probably lost last time, so.
Thank you, Ms. Wall. Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I object also. Ms. Wall spoke everything I was to say.
Very good. Ms. Hughes Candies.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I was on the same tip and I was like debating whether or not to formally object to it. And it's really only just because like this is of course, this is what we strive for completely. I just don't want staff to, I know staff is limited, so that's the only reason I'm objecting,
Yeah.
but.
Go ahead. I was going to make an amendment, but should I try that first? Very good. I would move that we strike the "and implement" part. I wanted to make it like, let's see what's out there, what makes sense. I think I'd want to increase public access to CBJ financial information. I just want to make sure it makes sense. We know there's probably a cost and staff time or whatever. I'd like to hear it, but maybe by removing the implement part, maybe, I don't know, that makes me feel like, let's take a look. Don't feel like people have to be, printing the budget in a bunch of other languages, which maybe we should do. But anyway, Ms. Atkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think we do have a habit of wanting staff to explore things that many of us are not going to support, and that's just a waste of staff time and city money. So I know I will not support this regardless of what staff bring forward, so I'm going to object to your amendment.
Very good. There's an amendment and objection. Is there further objection? Does anyone want to speak to that? Very good. We have an amendment and objection. Ms. Hirsch, would you please call the roll? And yeah. If you need me to restate it, you can, but I think you probably got it.
Amendment by Deputy Mayor Smith to strike "and implement" from the goal, investigate and implement methods to improve public access to CBJ financial information.
Thank you, Ms. Hirsch.
Deputy Mayor Smith.
Yes.
Ms. Atkinson.
No.
Ms. Wool.
Yes.
Ms. Hall.
Yes.
Mr. Brooks.
No.
Ms. Hughes Candies.
No.
Mr. Kelly.
No.
Mr. Steininger.
Yes.
Madam Mayor.
No.
Amendment fails, 4 yeas, 5 nays.
Thank you, Ms. Hirsch. Yeah, we have a motion and there has been objection, but go ahead, Mr. Steininger.
And I'm going to speak in support of the motion. I also helped Mr. Brooks as well on wordsmithing this one. Originally, this came about around a call for a online checkbook of some sort for the city and borough of Juneau. I have both positive and negative feelings about different online checkbooks for different, areas of or different governments that are out there in Alaska. But I do think it is kind of a modern expectation of a democratic institution. And so I think that we should investigate it and then potentially implement it. But I don't think this forces us to vote yes to implement.
Very good. These are aspirational. Can we adopt these via resolution or? Pardon me. Any further comments, objections on the motion? Ms. Hughes Candies.
I'll just add one more comment because I really, that was hard because like that it's a good fix. And yet if I ask staff to investigate something, then that's the staff capacity part, implement is the money part, but if we investigate then, and yet it's such a good goal. Of course, we all want this. I I love being able to see what my government is spending money on, but also without context, it doesn't really help me that much. So I'm just saying this is hard, but I'm still going to object. But I really do appreciate where this is coming from, and I don't think if this doesn't end up in here, that doesn't mean that we can't keep trying to figure out how to make it better, because I know staff does that every day, and I actually think the finance section of our website is one of the better sites of our website, or better parts.
Thank you, Ms. Candies. I'll just speak briefly. Again, aspirational. I just don't know what's out there. Again, the cost may be too great, the time may be too great, maybe they just aren't great softwares, whatever. But I'm open to looking. So we have a motion with objection. Ms. Hirsch, would you please call the roll?
Motion to add, investigate and implement methods to improve public access to CBJ financial information to assembly goals. Mr. Brooks,
Yes.
Ms. Wool,
No.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Ms. Atkinson,
No.
Mr. Steininger,
Yes.
Ms. Hall,
Yes.
Ms. Hughes Candies,
No.
Madam Mayor.
Madam Mayor, we cannot hear you. We're on this edge of our seats.
No.
Oh.
Deputy Mayor Smith.
Yes.
Motion carries 5 yeas, 4 nays.
Thank you, Ms. Hirsch. The last one I see is on page 4. I would say the color coding, yes. I do not know if we have come to a alignment between the 3 people working on it. So, Ms. Hall, if you'd like to, yeah.
Okay, yeah, I think what's happening there, support local nonprofits in establishing basic services for unsheltered individuals, yada, yada, yada. I think we're already doing that. As what we propose in place of that would be reassess policy on dispersed camping while continuing to identify, support, sanction camping or shelter locations where adequate facilities exist. And I'll speak to that, you know, I think we need to kind of keep this at the forefront. Every spring when the cold weather shelter closes, there's a bit of a panic in the community, and without kind of having this as implementing action, I just want us to kind of remain focused on that. So, yeah, that's our new implementing action.
Very good. Ms. Hall, would you like to read that again?
Reassess policy on dispersed camping while continuing to identify / support sanction camping or shelter locations where adequate facilities exist.
Objections to the motion? I can understand also if, you know, people need to read it. Ms. Wall.
You know, I usually, reading is my way of processing. I think it sounds good from here, so I'm supportive of moving it forward, knowing that we can revisit it at the next one once we've seen it. So, and thought about it. Sorry, I know no one objected, but
You're right.
that's my intent.
Here's, let me, oh wait, am I not supposed to do things as the chair? I was wondering if we table this to the next meeting, and that way people can look at it and vote on it at 5. Okay, fine, go for it. Postpone, I mean. Or we just put it in, but once it's in, it takes 5 to get back out. Madam Mayor.
The answer to the question is no, the chair can't make motions, and I would object to that chair made motion anyway.
Point of order, me from afar. Ms. Atkinson.
I want to be
cognizant of people needing to process things and think about them, but also staff can't work on goals until we decide what the goals are. So I do feel like stretching out this process is detrimental to what we want to see happen as well. So I'm a little iffy about postponing
Sure.
it
I guess,
on that.
yeah. Miss Hughes Candies.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I guess I would say I'm in favor of getting it into, I also hate when someone brings, said softly and lovingly. If especially, but if it was a more consequential decision, but I paid attention, what you read, I liked, that sounds fine. And then I know that I can look at it. So I'm comfortable moving this forward and I'm cognizant of the fact that staff is patient, but also wants something to put on the website.
Ms. Hall.
I'll just say, so the reassess the policy on dispersed camping, that's something that should be happening regardless. And all the while continue to identify and support sanctioned camping, or, ideally would be additional shelter location where adequate facilities exist, meaning place to shower and do your laundry and so anyway, that's kind of keeping the door open to all options, but also keeping our focus on that's a very acute need in our community.
Thank you, Ms. Hall. At one point I'm like, do we need to reassess that policy? That's kind of the one that's giving me cause, but it's an important issue. I think staff knows how to package things and bring them to us too in a way that's like, hey, where do we actually need to try to make a decision? So, and I think it's an appropriate level goal. Okay. Is there any objection to including that in our goals? Seeing none, that has been added to our goals. That is the last of the new items. Again, this will be up for us in action in a couple of weeks. Take a look. Madam Mayor.
I move the goals as amended to the full
thank you.
assembly. Or do we need to do that even? Can we just?
I think that's probably good. That's probably good. Thank you. I was just gonna move right on. Very good. You've heard the motion. Is there objection to the motion? Seeing none, that motion is adopted. Madam Manager, do we have staff reports?
No staff reports.
Very good. You can see our next meeting date, February 23rd. With nothing else before the committee of the whole, we are adjourned.